All right, cool. So I'm just gonna kind of restart, but on the daily or on the 4 hour. Looking at gold, we can see prices approaching these highs, and I'm basically looking just to see how price accumulates around this area. So if we can, let me go all the way into, we'll dive into this in a minute. We'll zoom in. So what I'm looking for is, as prices in this area, to come up here and reject again, and maybe come up higher and reject again, and then maybe on that last day that it's finally time to go, we come all the way up in this area, maybe not even that high. This is a little bit dramatized, and then that push down, breaking this low, and then just a complete tip over into this area. Something along the lines of that, at least. Delete all that. Now, with those first targets being said, the full swing targets are still 1750 and 1720, because what I would really, really like to see happen is price spike above this high very slightly, come down either to just under this low or just under this low, and relatively quickly, and then just explode into new highs. Like so, especially if Russia and Ukraine start going at it, and then the US gets involved, and there's just going to be a bunch of chaos. I think a lot of people are going to start putting their money in safe haven assets, such as gold. But in the meantime, or before that, I think we might get a massive sell-off to grab a ton of liquidity before we just explode, and yeah, maybe even make a new all-time high and go to like 2100. So that is the overall picture of what I'm looking for, from like a weekly, or honestly at this point, this is monthly standpoint, like August. So we'll see what happens. If we can get this huge push down, then we're going to be playing, we're going to be playing the long game. And if it snipes down here, or this is, I really don't think this is going to happen, but it's possible it snipes down there, which again, I don't think that'll happen. But if it does, whatever low we get the entry on, likely one of these two, that is going to be, I'll probably hold that the whole time. Like, if as long as it keeps moving up, I'm holding it. Obviously close some along the way as it generates thousands of pips, but that'd be pretty interesting, even just to hold some partials all the way up to like all-time highs, 2100 area. So pretty simple with gold, just waiting to see, honestly, something very similar to this. As you can see, we had a huge push up here into these areas, and then the following week pushed up and made a wick higher than this one, and then it dropped down here, and then the following week, so on and so forth, similar to right here as well. It pushes up right here, pushes up a second time, then this following week pushes just a little bit higher than that wick, comes down here, and then just drops, stalls, drops, right? So very similar to these drop-offs. Honestly, all of them, and the flip on the buy side. So zooming in one last time just to get we'll go to the 4 hour. A good visual. Honestly, the daily is the best. Daily really is best. Something like that. I really do think at least down here. But right now, as price pulls into this area, I will be closing most of the trade down here, because it is possible that maybe my huge sells and buys isn't 100% accurate, and it just pulls back down here before it continues back up. So around here, we'll be closing most of the trade, and that's like, I don't know, like 600 some pips. And then as it sets up, possibly we'll get another sell entry, or buy entry. It all depends what happens, but at least to start the week off, definitely looking to see price come up to like 1870, 1877, and then sell. And that's it for gold. Does anyone have questions with gold? It's pretty simple. Just waiting for it to come up there. All right, we're going to switch to Bitcoin. Bitcoin last week was just perfect. Did exactly what we were thinking it was going to do. I had this level marked here. We came in and spiked it, and then we dropped. And then I was looking for another spike slightly above that high. That's what happened. The same time we originally entered that gold sell at 1838. Placed an entry here, and it just dumped for 2 days straight. And as expected, over this past weekend, it has been stalling. So going forward, what I'm expecting this week is price to pull up into like 44 or 45 or 44,500 area, which I will zoom in the smaller time frame in a minute. But pull up in here to make that wick for the weekly candle, and then push down here and hopefully close below 40,000 anywhere this week. So in 7 days from now, if we're anywhere below 40,000, I'm pretty sure we're just going to accumulate for another week before continuing to at least hit this, which is essentially 33,000, but a little bit under that. Possibly coming all the way down here to these daily lows. But the majority of the trade is definitely going to be closed on the end of the first week, hopefully around 38,000, and then accumulate, maybe get another entry and hold that towards lower 30,000 area. So let's look at this on the 4-hour. What I'm basically looking at is these highs of the 4-hour candle, because that tells me where all the liquidity is. As you can see, price dropped from here, made this spike up and dropped again. And then right here, even price was pushing up here, and then it just completely drained from 40, pretty much 44,000. So I'm going to go all the way into the 30-minute, which is where I'm going to anchor the VWAP when it originally spiked into this area. And as you can see, as price hangs out in this lower area, the top VWAP is slightly dragged down with it, which is exactly what I was expecting. So that lines up as well as price hitting these zones. So whether it be Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever day it is, at some point I'm looking for Bitcoin to hit above 44,000, and within this area right here, I'm honestly even going to delete this. Within this area right here is where I'm looking to place another entry. Stop loss is going to be most likely this high right here, or honestly probably the blue line, 45,500. I highly doubt that if we're going to continue down like this, we're not going to come all the way back up here. We're definitely going to spike up here, which is like 200 pips. And I'm even considering, I have this low right here. Let me zoom in. See how right before it exploded, it pushed up, came back, grabbed these orders here and exploded. So I marked that level. And it's interesting that we see all of these spikes right above this level. And I'm actually considering hedging this position. And if price spikes right under here, like to 41,600 and rejects, I'm considering entering a little buy, because that's like 300 pips back up. And the sell entries are literally at the top up here. So, I mean, that's just profit asking to be made right there. So we'll see what happens. I'm not really too focused on that buy at all. It's rather just, you know, if it presents perfectly, then I might put a tiny bit of risk on it. Otherwise, I'm just waiting for that additional sell entry at the 44,600 area. Looking at the weekly we can see this week is going to close out here soon with a massive pin bar. That's just beautiful. So on a weekly, what this next week I'm hoping looks like is something, you know, like this or like this with a pretty decent wick. Let's see, how big is this wick? 180. So obviously the week isn't closed yet, but that would bring a wick right into 40, right into that same area that we're just looking at. Oh no, that's okay. Yeah, I was looking at the right one. So hopefully we can get that wick up, take the entry, and catch a couple thousand pips or 1,000. Anyone have questions with Bitcoin?
No.
Again, it's pretty straightforward price action. There's nothing too crazy going on. So let's just briefly touch a couple of these. I haven't really deeply analyzed these. I'm more focused on gold and Bitcoin, but I do have my eyes on them a little bit. So pound yen really, but first we're going to look at the yen basket. We can see price has pulled into these lows right here. And rejected very nicely out of it. And price has been squeezing. So it's very possible that we pop up here and test this high again in order to determine if we're going to make all-time lows or if we're going to continue back up. So let me try this cool trick here. With that, we'll go to the daily real quick just to see that. Right, so you get an idea of what we're looking at the daily. Price pushed down here, made this low. It showed us it wanted to move up. It actually pulled up really far into this area. Then it pulled all the way back down and took out this low. And then the following day it exploded, but it did show us nice rejection from this area. So as long as price can continue to hold this, I believe we're going to push up into these highs. With that being said, we can translate that to the pound yen, and we can look at shorting it. So we're way back up into these highs already, which we're not expecting. We are shorting here, and yeah, just continue to explode. However, if I mark up this body high right there, then the high of these wicks, and then the high of these wicks, you can see we have been respecting these areas very well. First day it came in, it pushed up past this high even, and that high, and it stayed within this area. And then the next day it tried again, and then it dumped, but it did close all the way back here. So what I would really like to see is, I'm actually gonna go like that just to highlight this area. I would like to see price come into this area one more time very briefly, pretty much just above 157 and well 157.2, and make a spike on the daily and then drop. My target is going to be probably this low at first, just in case it doesn't want to continue. But then the target's going to be 153 all the way down here, and if it breaks that, we could even be going towards these lows down here. Based off of the weekly wick, you can see if we gain enough momentum to the downside, we could replicate something like this again and just completely dump, honestly, to this low right here. Right there, right. I'm going to mark up both of these actually. Oops. So if we're going to get huge momentum like that, yeah, I think we could dump all the way into these lows, which would be 900 pips. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what type of pressure the yen can give us, because if the yen decides it wants to explode and it breaks this high and it'll probably break this high, then the basket yen could definitely fall over into 148 area. And then Euro USD, I'm actually just gonna go to the 4-hour for this. So I'm thinking we're gonna tap out this low right here. We get the good 1, 2, 3. And from here, possibly move up if the euro itself starts gaining a lot of strength. As far as an entry goes, let me zoom in the 1 hour. Prime entry would be up in this area. However, I do not think we will pull it back up that high. So I'm really looking at a Fibonacci retracement to 0.618 or 0.786. So if Euro USD pulls back into like 1.146-ish area, then I will be looking to take a sell because that would give us a decent stop loss, like 37 pips. And the target is just over 300. It would be to take out that low. So we'll see what happens. I haven't really put a ton of time into this pair, but there is a pretty good opportunity that I think might happen. You can see right here, he pushed up, made the low, snapped that high out and dropped, slight pullback, dropped again. So honestly, it might not even pull back to this high and then I just wouldn't take the entry. But if it does pull back to this high, I'm definitely going to be looking to place an entry there because that's a very clear push and sign that it wants to go down to this low. And lastly, real quick, not putting a bunch of attention on this pair right now either at the moment, but I do want to see if price pulls back up into this higher, like close to 9100 area and wicks and starts turning around, because then we still could continue down and hit these swing lows if that rejection continues. So I'm going to be waiting for, actually, let's check out the Fibonacci. So I like how that fib is lining up with that high right there. But this was also lining up with that daily level I previously marked. So that lines up really well. I'm just going to keep the fib on. And I'm looking for this area to be hit for an entry because let's see, what type of stop loss? That is huge. We'll have to see. That's a little better here. If price actually pushes up into this area, I would wait and see if it taps into these wicks, because if it can tap, if it pulls up here, if it can just snap into this area of the wicks, that would give a much better stop loss and entry point. 50 pips. If the entry is up here, stop loss can then be above this high, and 50-point stop loss to a almost 400 pip target. Very good risk to reward, and that's only target 1. Target 2 is going to be this low down here, which is 738 pips. So if price can pull up into this area and then just wick into these highs, that would be a really quick entry, but a very good price to entry with a good stop loss. That is all I got this week. Does anyone have any questions over any pairs?